My guest today is an intelligent, longtime acquaintance and avid writer, Mr. Tommy Foltz. I first became aware of Tommy's intelligent perspective when he wrote for the Best of Arkansas Sports, an online publication based in Northwest Arkansas. At the time, my husband would read out loud to me Tommy's articles. I always agreed with his written comments. Later, I began to follow Tommy on Facebook and read his Razorback post-game posts. Sometimes my husband and I would use Tommy's perspective to settle an argument about how a game was won or lost. But I am not the only person to notice Tommy's bright ideas and quick wit. As far back as college, he worked for some impressive people, President Bill Clinton and Senator Dale Bumpers. In his early career, he worked on a national scale in a big business of natural gas. Most recently, Mr. Foltz has become an editorial writer for the Democrat-Gazette newspaper, a platform for him to write about just about anything. Like many 50-plus people, Tommy has a windy story full of ups and downs. And like all successful people, he has a never-quit attitude. I don't say this next thing lightly. With Tommy's permission, today we're going to talk about his early successes, his political connections, his near-death experience from liver failure, and the unthinkable, the tragic loss of his son to suicide. If you don't already know, the number 2 cause of death among 10 to 24-year-olds is suicide. It is with great pleasure I welcome to the table the deep thinker, thought-provoking writer, and survivor, Mr. Tommy Foltz. Hey, Tommy.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you setting me up to follow the Dalai Lama. That's there's nowhere to go but down from here.
I told you he was quick-witted. That's pretty funny. So you're the only person, I think, that has ever filled out the questionnaire so perfectly. You were like, I mean, you could tell you're a writer. You're like, I don't really want to fill out this questionnaire. I'm going to send you a chronological date of everything that's happened to me since I graduated from high school. I was like, thank you very much, Tommy.
I don't know
that you want.
That's not everything that's happened to me, but some of the highlights for sure.
So after reading your bio, I know that you love sports, and I didn't know why you love sports, and I didn't know why you knew so much about sports because, like I said in the intro, I've been reading your articles. But you're a place kicker. I guess you kicked in high school at Central High School.
I did.
And then you were going to go to college and be a place kicker.
Well, I had an opportunity to be kind of what you would call now like a preferred walk-on at the University of Tennessee, and I decided that if I'm going to play for a state school, that I'd go play for my own state school. So I tried out my freshman year and didn't make it. I felt like I didn't make it.
Where? At University of Arkansas?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the second semester, I tried out again and felt like I did make it. And at that time, we were kind of struggling with kickers up there, and I was basically rejected. So I walked on back to the Fidel House and continued my career from there.
Your drinking career, that's about all those fraternities are good for sometimes.
Yeah, it was, well, my college career was kind of a, major in chasing girls. And I played a lot of basketball, drank a lot of beer, played, chased a lot of girls.
I could tell because when you graduated from college, you moved to Colorado, and with your good brain, you worked in bars and you worked on the ski slope.
Well, I did. I mean,
that's for fun.
Well, I kind of, to get where I am today, I've kind of followed the normal path that any journalist would take, which is, to get a communication degree, not journalism, move to Aspen, ski and mountain bike, for a year, move to DC, work in a presidential campaign and administration, move home, build a biodiesel plant, become an oil and gas lobbyist, and then apply for a job as an editorialist at the Democrat-Gazette.
Very normal trajectory.
That's exactly what you should do.
It is textbook. It's a textbook route to get where I am right now.
So during college, you summer interned for Governor Clinton. I guess it was Governor Clinton at the time. And then you were also 1 year in Washington with Senator Dale Bumpers. Talk about those years and what you learned.
Well, I was in Washington for that summer, in the summer of '87. So I'm already dating myself, but it was it did something for me that really, for one, it made me kind of understand that there's not all that much difference between me and, the guy who goes to Harvard or Yale or, Vanderbilt or wherever. So I kind of gained some confidence just, I guess, maybe intellectually, but it also, I got very familiar with the town itself. And so moving back up there, it was always kind of my plan. Literally, before I left high school I was going to go to DC after college. I just, I kind of, when I should have been listening to, economics my senior year in high school, I was sitting back there reading a book called A Hero for Our Time by about John F. Kennedy. So I was bitten pretty early by the, kind of the political bug and really kind of the soaring rhetoric of Kennedy and some others. And that's kind of what got me moving in the direction of writing, I think. So
why didn't you major in political science?
I did, and
communications.
I changed my major from political science to communication just because, I was wanting to talk about current events, and political science, at least the classes that I had taken up to that point, seemed much more like a history major, and that's just not. I'm a big believer in understanding and remembering history. That's one of the things that Dale Bumpers always used to say is that, when you forget history, you're doomed for the future because you've got to, basically learn from your mistakes, which is kind of, I guess, metaphor for life in general. You kind of you either win or you learn in sports. If you don't learn, then you really did lose. So, I just kind of, I wanted to get more into, what was going on politically at the time, not wanting to hear about what happened in the New Deal and, the Civil War and all that. And so I switched to communication. At least at that time, they didn't offer a minor in political science, but if they had, I would have had a minor in political science.
Didn't you get a gift going to Washington to learn that we all put our pants on one leg at a time?
Yeah. Yeah. I lived in DC for 10 years after, when I got out of college, and, you do start to understand that, and I think it's a big problem today, is that these are people, and not everybody does everything for blatant political reasons.
Are you sure?
Well, I think we call that into question in some cases, but I think that, some people really are doing what they do because they think it's right. Asa Hutchins said something like that, I think over the weekend that, or I guess John Brummett wrote about it. That, sometimes you just do and say what you think is right, and with no, political agenda or ulterior motive. And there's a lot of that goes on in Washington, D.C. that people just don't understand that. But I think the main thing, for whatever reason, is that, right now people just want to be mad. And
they want to get on the cover of the newspaper and on the headlines. And the only way you can do that is if you say something outrageous or you...
They want to raise money so they can get reelected. And they don't... they're not so concerned about how it would impact their party. And I'm thinking of a few people in general. And I will say, if we get into any political discussion, I just want to make sure that you know that these are my opinions and not necessarily those of the Democrat-Gazette.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I do need to say that because, the way it works at the Democrat-Gazette, or really at any newsroom, I'm in the editorial section, and then there's the journalism section, and there's a wall between us. Basically, we don't tell them what to report on, and they don't tell us how to think about what they reported on. So,
nice.
And there are some things that I would say politically, if I had my own column, that I can't say, because basically I'm a big music person, and it's kind of like, we're the studio musicians. Where Rex Nelson's of the world and John Brummett and those guys they're the lead guitarists and lead vocalists. We're the guys who don't get, our name, on the album cover.
Yeah.
but we provide a lot of the music
Your
underneath.
backup.
Yeah. So, I certainly have a lot of political opinions, and
And they let you write about those, though, don't they?
well, they do to some degree.
Today you wrote something funny. What was it? It was about the draft. No, it wasn't about the draft.
I didn't have one today, actually.
What was it that you wrote the other day that was funny? Oh, well, you write a lot
Well,
of
it's so
them.
hard to find that, pieces that are not funny.
I know. Everything you write is a little bit funny and sarcastic and has a little twist at the end. And you don't sign anything. People can't tell they're yours.
Right. Well, I can't. I mean, the way
They don't let you?
The way they can tell them that are mine, I put them on Facebook if it's mine.
Oh, that's where I read it, actually.
Yeah,
that's how I knew it was yours.
Yeah. So
Can anybody join your Facebook page? Is it open to the public?
it was.
Tommy Foltz, Foltz.
Yeah.
I highly recommend to all our listeners to get on there because he posts about everything.
Well, and before we go much further, I do want to, I've been to the Democrat-Gazette for about 90 days. So this is new. I've had 60 editorials published, and they range anywhere from 3 or 4 paragraphs to full blown, the whole, the entire,
How long
column.
did you say you've been there? 90 days?
90.
And you've written how many?
I had 60 published.
How many have you written?
I don't know, 85, 90.
Every day.
You'd be surprised that when somebody's paying you to write, how much content you can provide. But let me just give you just a smattering of what I've written about: artificial intelligence, Argenta, Standard Lithium, renewable energy, oil and gas, laboratory produced food from woolly mammoths, goat herding in California, election denialism, book banning, mortgage rates, the Little Rock port, river dredging, eagles being killed by windmills, deaths from self-driving cars, federal land leasing, voter ID, congressional redistricting, the fentanyl crisis, killer whales sinking boats in the Strait of Gibraltar, and grammar misuse, and even the death of Gordon Lightfoot. So,
did he die?
they've given me a lot of freedom.
I'll say.
To find things that, the philosophy is kind of, I'm not assigned anything. The philosophy is that if you think it's interesting, then most likely other people will think it's interesting. And I question that philosophy some, because I'm not sure that everything I think is interesting is going to be interesting to everybody else. But I do try to find things that I think most people want to write about. And, I've written a ton about renewable energy to the point where I almost kind of want to stay away from it for a little bit, just because we've published so much on it, and it's great. And I'm all for it. The paper's all for it, but it's at the risk of a little overkill right now. And again, that's my personal opinion.
Well, I remembered when you were listing all the things, subjects you had written about, topics, it was that food, fake meat food, and how they roll it out and then they shape it into looking like real food, but it's not really a meat.
Disgusting.
And then at the very end you went, oh, yum.
Yeah.
That was what it was.
Well, my personal philosophy on this, and I think, they let me get away with it because I think other people feel this way too. But, the last thing anybody wants to do at 40 to 65 or whatever is read a term paper. So I'm not going to write it like it's a term paper.
No, you're not.
Not if you want people to read at all.
Got to be fun.
And especially to the end. It's got to be, you got to throw a little bit of humor in there somewhere, unless it's just a subject, like the piece I did on suicide earlier this week. There's nothing funny about suicide. So you can't, there's some that you can't infuse humor into, but a lot of it you can. And the Democrat-Gazette's great about that.
Where did you get your drive and political drive interest? Are your parents in politics?
No, well, no, not really. My grandmother was, she was pretty active in Fort Smith. My stepdad and mom, and my dad, we've always kind of been around it. a little bit. And my mom, she worked on the 92 presidential campaign in finance, raising money for the campaign, where I was an advanced consultant, and then I was a communication director. I was so important to the campaign that they made me communication break. I'm thinking Led Zeppelin communications breakdown. They made me communication director in North Dakota.
Oh, I saw that.
All three of those electoral college
really
votes.
Big.
Yeah, it was huge. So,
you keep talking about music. When did you start playing the guitar?
I started playing guitar about 5-6 years ago.
Oh, recently.
Yeah. I mean, I'm self-taught, and if I had a guitar, I could probably convince you of that. But after my son died, there was a lot of introspection, and I wanted to do something, something positive, from a, prevention standpoint. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I could do. And so a friend of mine had started a blog, and I called her up and I said, how'd you do that? And we talked a little bit, and I started a blog called Foltz Forward. Very positive, very, get up, dust yourself off. Don't ever be the victim, kind of a mentality, which we can come back to later, because I did allow myself to become the victim eventually. But I wrote that for about a year, and that was, I got such positive feedback on it, that's one of the things that gave me the confidence, plus the Facebook postings that people giving me so much positive feedback on it. That's one of the things that gave me the confidence to apply at the Democrat-Gazette. But after about a year of writing that blog, I felt like I'd said everything I could say, or everything that I knew to say. I mean, I'm not a mental health expert at all, and all I can do is relate, my personal experience, and I just kind of unapologetically put it away. And it's out there for people. So people still go to the Facebook page, and I can see where more people visit that Facebook page when there's some kind of tragedy, like kind of within my community. What I started doing, the reason I did a blog is because I didn't want to write all this stuff like I do, the Razorback stuff on Facebook. I mean, I don't want to subject everybody who, if they don't want to read about it, I didn't feel like that was the right forum, mm-hmm. or the right medium, or whatever you call it. So
you didn't want it to be in their news feed. You wanted them to go to it if they wanted to go to it. If
they're interested, and there were enough people interested that I did start a Facebook page with that, with the blog. And so people could go and they could read some of the stuff on Facebook without having to go into the blog and all that. But when I stopped writing the blog, I picked up the guitar. I mean, I have always wanted, I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and it's just been a lifelong kind of, not obsession, or I would have done it a lot earlier, but,
it's been on your bucket list.
Well, yeah. And I will say, I have just really, through all the ups and downs, I don't really have any regrets in life, but the one regret I have is that I didn't start playing guitar earlier.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's something where now, and I am getting, better enough that my neighbors unsolicited I can't believe you never had lessons. And, it's like, this is the greatest day of my life.
Are there musicians in your family?
No, my dad played guitar.
He did. So there you go.
But not, he wasn't Jimmy Page, you know. I mean,
but you've got it in your DNA.
Well, I guess a little bit.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Tommy Foltz, jack of all trades, as you've heard. Currently, he's an editorial writer for the Democrat-Gazette in Little Rock, Arkansas. Still to come, entrepreneurship, his business in the business of natural gas. Does he think we're in an energy crisis? I'd like to get his feedback on that. Loving to write, you know that. He's a survivor from liver failure. That'll be an interesting story. And last, Tommy shares the heartbreak that he's already been sharing with you and the healing of his son's suicide. We'll be right back. You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I am telling an American-made story today. I'm speaking today with a writer, a businessman, a politician, a dad, and a survivor, Mr. Tommy Foltz. All right, you have, just to recap, if you're just tuning in right now, you're a place kicker in high school, thought you were going to be in one in college. You've dabbled in politics a little bit. You've been appointed, I think, didn't you get an appointment to Bill Clinton when he became the president because you worked on his campaign?
I
and
did.
He appointed you. And I think that's how you started into your
Energy.
business. So you got an appointment.
To the U.S. Department of Energy.
There you go, U.S. Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. So you had moved home to Little Rock to work on his campaign. And now you've been appointed and you're moving back to Washington, a place you really know well because you spent your summers there.
Yeah, well, when I left Aspen in 91, I was in Little Rock for about 12 days and went straight over to D.C. and was there for about 10 months. Clinton announced, and I ended up throwing everything in my mom and stepdad's house and went on the road doing advance work. And that's why I can say that I've visited 47 of the lower 48 states over my years, and the only one, Idaho.
Okay, I was about to say,
Idaho.
which one?
And
Hawaii, I guess.
Well, the lower 48.
Oh, the lower 48.
But yeah, I've never been to Alaska or Hawaii or Idaho, and Idaho's got great skiing. I don't know why I've never been there, but
That's it.
so
Didn't know that.
So you never heard of Sun Valley, Idaho?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
It's in the Rockies. But so after the campaign, it was, again, a week or so home and then straight over to D.C. I moved over to D.C. in Thanksgiving week of 92 and worked on the presidential inaugural committee. And when that was over with, everybody was scrambling to try to get jobs in the administration. And I thought, I know I'm going to move home to Arkansas at some point. And, Arkansas is kind of an energy state. I didn't really know what I was talking about at that time. And we're not as big of an energy state as I thought we were, although we're kind of turning the corner on that right now. Mm-hmm. But I thought, energy department would be a good place for me to be. And so I spent four years there as a presidential appointee, and I learned a lot. A whole lot. There was no question about it. There was, what I did was I was trying to help develop the market for natural gas vehicles. So that familiarized myself with electric vehicles, ethanol vehicles, biodiesel, liquefied natural gas, et cetera, et cetera. And then after 4 years, I left the department and started my own consulting firm called Clean Fuel Strategies.
Who did you consult?
People in the natural gas vehicle market are in the
So what are some of the questions they would ask you? Or what would be something they'd come to you and say, I need to know? Well,
I was not a registered lobbyist, which meant, I couldn't go ask, a congressman from Colorado for their vote, but I could introduce my clients from Colorado to
people from the U.S. Department of Energy.
Yeah, or Congress. And I was also a grant writer. And essentially
I see.
A lot of what I would do, and this became more prevalent once I moved back to Little Rock after, I moved back in 2001. So I've been home for 22 years. And we'd go out and we would try to develop a project, and we'd go out and get the grant funding for the fleet that we wanted to provide the fuel for. And so we would, there would be one piece of it would be getting the legislation passed that authorizes the funding and the program to do that. Once that's in place, then go and get the funding. But all that's done around, a project that we developed so that we could provide the gas.
Is there a project you're proud of?
Well, the most proud of anything that I did as a kind of quote lobbyist, came later in the oil and gas business. And that when I was at Petrohawk and BHP Billiton, as an employee, I wasn't consulting for them. We were able to get, one thing we were able to do is we were able to get Petrohawk to endorse the idea of disclosing the chemicals that are used in hydraulic fracturing.
Oh,
so
that's a big one.
We were taking kind of a progressive, forward-thinking stance, and we weren't the only ones. I mean, there were some other good, large independent producers that were doing the same thing.
And for people that don't, fracking was making people's water burn.
Well,
remember that?
That's
what they said.
A lot of that was
that?
That was staged. I mean, I know for a fact that a lot of that was staged. Yeah, I mean, and that's not to say that fracking can't contaminate groundwater, because it can. And like the earthquakes over in Oklahoma, I mean, that was
from fracking. Yeah,
and it wasn't really from fracking. It was from injecting the water back into the ground in the wrong place, and it's geology that I don't understand. But even the industry admits that they were the problem there.
Are they still fracking?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where?
Everywhere.
Here in Arkansas?
Not in Arkansas. I mean, unfortunately, the Fayetteville Shale, of all the kind of economic shale plays in the country, it's the least economic. I mean,
I don't know if that's unfortunate or not. I'm kind of glad.
Well,
I don't want earthquakes.
Well, but we weren't really having a whole lot of earthquakes. We were putting it in Arkansas.
It just makes sense. You go up disrupting the ground, you're going to have problems, doesn't it? No?
Yeah,
look, he doesn't agree with me.
Well, I mean,
a little more complicated than that.
It's more complicated than that, right? I mean, there is something to it. Yes, there's no doubt. But at the same time, it's kind of like, we don't cover, a drop of oil getting from North Dakota to the Gulf Coast safely without incident. We cover the pipeline spills because they're so rare. It's like covering an airline crash. I mean, nobody covers it when, American Airlines lands safely. They cover it when there's a crash, and there's so few of those that it makes it look like it's a bigger deal than it is.
What an interesting perspective.
Right.
Well,
but it's true.
Well, it's what you tell yourself when you get in a plane to go up. It's like, it's safe statistically.
It's still, statistically speaking, it is the safest way to travel,
right,
without a question. And then from an environmental standpoint, moving oil or gas by pipeline is by far the most environmentally friendly way to do it.
Tommy, I've asked people this forever. What happens? What does the earth think when there's no more? What is the purpose of oil and gas in the earth? And when it's all pulled out, what does that do to the earth? I mean, doesn't it have a purpose? Nobody seems to know. That's what everybody says, but
no,
surely it does.
It's not really supposed. I don't think there's really a purpose. It's dead dinosaurs and fossils, and just built up over millions and millions and millions of years, and turns into something that's liquid that happens to have a lot of, puts a lot of energy in a gallon of gasoline. So let me go back there to tell you about what I'm most proud of.
I'm sorry. Yes.
In the process of fracking, there is a lot of trucking that's used, and we were very big down in South Texas, and those are caliche kind of dirt gravel roads that when they get wet, there's all kinds of opportunity to rut them up. And really, they require a lot of maintenance. And so we as a company would just cut a check to the county right before we drilled a well. It was never enough, but I was able to get the Texas legislature with some help, but I've kind of spearheaded the whole thing to get $225 million from the state to the counties to repair those roads. And again, it wasn't enough, but it's a whole lot better than $0. And it was the first time that I know of in the history of the state of Texas where the state actually provided money to the counties, because there's a big separation between state and county in Texas. And so, to get $225 million was a pretty big deal, and it did some good.
And it does tear the roads up. I remember people in Searcy, Arkansas complaining about the roads being torn up from the big trucks. What do you think's the future?
But they they weren't complaining about the low cost of natural gas.
No, they're not.
And that's I guess the deal is that, there are trade-offs for all kinds of energy. And I've got a piece that's coming out probably tomorrow, which I guess will be way in the past by the time people see this or hear this.
A couple weeks.
But it's about, it's just a matter of time until the environmental community started opposing projects that are designed to help the environment. And this happens in this case, it's in Nevada.
What's happening?
There's a lithium mine that's being built to extract lithium for the purpose of putting it into lithium batteries, which can be used in electric vehicles so that you have zero emission vehicles on the road. And lithium goes into the batteries that store the energy from wind and solar energy production. So the end use of it is all good. And these people who call themselves environmentalists are saying, wait a minute, no, this could contaminate our groundwater. It could contaminate the groundwater, but will it is the question. And by the way, 50% of the people or 36% of the people on the closest Indian reservation live in poverty, and 50% of them don't even have running water. So before we start talking about groundwater contamination or any kind of contamination, why don't we figure out a way to really help out the people who live on the reservation, which is to get them running water.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a matter of, not putting the cart before the horse, and it's a matter of priorities. I mean, if climate change is your priority,
lithium batteries are good.
You're going to have to be for that mine. And I know you may have to hold your nose and be for it. But if that's what you want, then that's
why is mining lithium any worse than mining anything else?
It's not.
I mean, we mine rocks all day long. We've got Granite Mountain. We've been mining for 40 years here in Arkansas.
It's not any worse. And, there are regulations around it, very tight regulations around that, around pipelines, around oil drilling, natural gas drilling. The regulations are there for a reason. And some people think that the regulations are too strict. I mean, I'm not one of those people, but some people think that they're too strict. So let the regulatory process work and just understand that, it's not, there's no silver bullet that's going to, even electric vehicles. I wrote the piece on we got 5 electric buses down here at Rock Region Metro. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And,
the other 39 buses are compressed natural gas. That's awesome. I mean, those are great things, but don't think, unless that, those buses are being powered by electricity that comes from wind or solar, the emissions are being produced somewhere.
Yeah.
And so even if it is produced by wind and solar, then there are no emissions, but you had to get the lithium from somewhere. I mean, there's an environmental impact for every source of energy that there is, and that's just something that we have to live with if we want to live in a modern world. Does
the sun have any environmental problems? If you can gather the sun, does it have any problems? Because you still have to use a battery to... Yeah,
that's it. No, solar energy is just absolutely zero emission, but you do have to mine rare earth minerals, and, lithium is not a rare earth mineral, but there are, and I can't even give you examples of what the rare earth minerals are, but those are mainly in China and Russia. And so, and they're commodities.
We're in trouble.
Well, exactly.
Well, now it's a geopolitical issue.
Yeah. Then it turns into a geopolitical issue, and it's a commodity. They are commodities, and there are price swings in the commodities markets, just like oil and gas. It's like you start talking about all the drawbacks of wind and solar, and they start coming real close to what the drawbacks are for oil and gas. And so,
are we going to run out of oil and gas? You can't run out of solar. But are we going to run out of oil and gas?
The Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. I'll just put it that way.
What does that mean?
What that means is that we will use oil and gas until it's no longer economically viable to use oil and gas. I mean, we stopped using rocks to kill buffaloes back in caveman days when we figured out the bow and arrow. And now we progressed all the way to a rifle. And so we're not using as much oil and gas because we figured out a way to harness the sun and the wind. Now, the fact is that with the increase in the use of electricity, we need it all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like one or the other. We need all the, the more energy we have in the marketplace, the lower it costs. That's better for people on fixed incomes, the elderly.
So the solar panels can go into the electrical grid.
Oh, yeah.
So that we don't have to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and they can either power your house, or they can power the grid, or they can power
what kind of car
industrial
do you drive?
Operations.
How do you fuel your car?
I drive a Ford F-150 pickup truck.
Well, of course you do.
Well, but I've driven all kinds of different cars, but I like to go hunting.
Yeah. It's hard to get up.
So yeah, you can't really take a Honda Accord into the duck woods.
No. It's hard to get it's hard to find a charging station.
Yeah. But like I say, I am all for renewable energy. I think it's great, but just everyone has to understand that it's not 100% clean, and that's the way it's being sold. And it's like, let's just be truthful.
Yeah.
Everyone. And that's
the kicker, isn't it, though? Is because you were talking about the lithium mines and Native Americans. It's like a social justice issue, because I feel like in my media sphere, those things are all becoming more and more linked when we talk about things like renewable energy and like moving into the future. It's like there's always kind of a give and take.
There, yeah. And
so far away.
And part of the issue also is that they consider that to be sacred land.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that almost everything is considered sacred land. And so, there's a cultural divide there.
Mm-hmm.
And, spanning that is the trick.
In the beginning, in the first thing you talked about history repeating itself, do you feel like we're repeating ourselves in history right now in any ways?
Yeah.
Which ways?
I don't really want to go into, deep. Well, I think that, again, these are my opinions and not necessarily those of the Democrat-Gazette, but I just see a lot of the politics these days smacks of McCarthyism and, 50s era and, the rollback of, a lot of labor we settled a lot of the labor issues a long time ago. Child labor, we settled that a long time ago. It's one of the things that differentiates us from the rest of the world. And now we're rolling that back. Why?
We are?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Oh, there are a number of states out there that are making it easier for, a 14-year-old to go work in a meat packing factory or
work a night shift
factory, night shifts. Everything is, so, I don't want to go get deep into the weeds.
How old were you when you got your first job?
Probably 15, working on a golf course. That's a whole different deal than working in a factory.
Yeah.
And it's a summertime deal.
I worked in a restaurant when I was 15.
Yeah. So there are, just a lot of things that seem like people are trying to thwart the progress that's been made. That's kind of generally accepted, and that is generally accepted by the vast majority of Americans, but the people in charge, because of the way we draw our congressional districts.
Is that ever going to get right?
I don't know. It's been a problem for
about 10 years.
About 250.
Oh, really?
And it's not just in America either. It's the people in charge are going to draw the lines that are the most favorable to them, so much so that, the real contest is in the primary. And so when the real contest is in the primary, you're going to get the most extreme people go and vote in the primary. So they're going to, elect the most extreme candidates.
Yes. Why do extreme people go to the polls?
Because they're more passionate.
Yeah.
Oh.
But, but the result of all that is, not only is it bad policy, but it's also, you got 40% of America that refuses to claim a political party, either Democrat or Republican.
Well, I'm kind of in the middle.
Well, I kind of feel like, if I can anger, I would use different words if I wasn't on the radio, but if I can anger Democrats and Republicans in the same editorial, I've done my job.
Yeah.
I remember I read in your bio in 2004 you ran unsuccessfully as a state representative. You were endorsed by the Democrat-Gazette that you now work for, and you wrote, "This is when I realized I was really neither a Democrat or a Republican. Too conservative to win the Democratic primary, too liberal to be a Republican." I thought, boy, is that not all of America?
Well, pretty much it is now. I mean, I definitely, I had no idea that. At the time, the newspaper wars were going on and all that. And I had done some work for Walter Hussman on education reform. But the Democrat-Gazette endorsed me in the Democratic primary. And I had people who voted early for me who were coming up to my mom after they got the endorsement. I got the endorsement, and they were like going, "I hope I didn't cast the wrong vote." And it's like, what? It's the Democrat-Gazette. I mean, it's the state newspaper. Why would you, when I interviewed for the job, I said, it's all said and done. I'd rather have the Democrat-Gazette's endorsement than actually be a state representative. So it's all good.
So when did you marry?
96.
Where were you working at that time?
I was at the energy department. We got married in D.C.
Oh, okay. So you thought one of your businesses you ended up one of the companies you were working for got sold to Boone Pickens, I think you said.
Yeah, it was a company called Blue Energy, and that's who I was talking about when we provided the liquefied natural gas for the Houston Metro, Houston Transit operation, and the compressed natural gas for the Fort Worth T, and then whoever the Boulder, we were in Colorado and Texas, and I was able to convince my boss, who's still a good friend of mine, that living in Little Rock was close enough. And at that time, it was cost about, $15 to fly back and forth between Little Rock and Dallas. And so, I was able to live here, but work down in Texas a lot.
Do you think while you were doing all that, you were going to end up rich? You're like, I'm in the right business, doing the right thing. I'm on my way.
I was rich for a while. Not so much anymore, but divorce will do that to you. But, but I will say, as far as career is concerned, I'm not just sucking up to my bosses here who might listen to this, but I mean, I've never been happier with doing what I do when I walk into the office and do what I do and leave. I mean, that time frame of being in the office, and and I write at home too, but when I'm in the office, I mean, my boss gets out of my way and lets me do what I do, and if he likes it, he'll publish it. If he doesn't, he won't.
I love it.
So yeah, it's great. I mean, it's good setup.
This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Tommy Foltz, jack of all trades. Currently, he's the
master of none.
I left that part out. I don't know about that. You're pretty good at writing. Currently, he is an editorial writer for the Democrat-Gazette in Little Rock, Arkansas. Still to come, surviving liver failure, and Tommy shares the heartbreak of his son's suicide and how he healed and learned to live with it. You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with a writer, a businessman, a politician, a dad, and a survivor, Mr. Tommy Foltz. Before the break, we talked about his entrepreneurship and how he started businesses in the oil and gas business. We talked about clean energy. He's a smart guy. If you're just tuning in, I highly recommend you go back and listen to the front of the show. I think I learned some stuff. So it's your parents' worst nightmare. And I want to tell our listeners that you wrote me and said, I want to talk about this. I want to share what I know. You're paying forward what you've learned. And last week, I read your article where you wrote about it. It's a parent's worst nightmare. His son dies of suicide in March of 2014. He starts a blog, talk about posting on Facebook, how it happened.
Well,
give us some statistics.
Nah, I mean,
are there warning signs?
Oh yeah, there are definitely warning signs, and we had them. I mean, I had two twin boys, and I will say, this is just kind of it's just the way life is. One of my sons just graduated from the University of Arkansas. He took a job in Dallas. He is as well adjusted as any kid I've ever seen. love him to death. We've got a great relationship. And
How old was he when his brother passed?
they were 13.
It's a critical age, too.
Yeah. In fact, when I guess what I haven't really talked about is that, I actually wrote a book about this and I have not published. And we can get into the why I didn't a little bit later. But in doing some of the research, statistically speaking, I was probably one of 5 dads in Arkansas that year who lost a 10 to 14-year-old to suicide. So, that alone is, makes you feel a little bit lonely, but my son Will had, we don't really, and never really will know exactly what was wrong.
No note?
Yeah, there was a note.
Oh.
But and it's, I'm not.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, I won't say what the rest of the note said, but it was all very nice to everyone he addressed, but he addressed it to me saying, "Dad, I love you a lot." And that a lot for a 13-year-old to me was kind of, wow, we're good with each other. And, but anyway, so he had been in therapy. We tried, medication. And so it was not, yes, of course it was a shock, but it was not, we knew it was a possibility. And, as a lot of suicide victims, seem to be getting better once they've made the choice that they've come to peace with what they're going to do. And it's just a matter of when they're going to do it. And it just happened that the opportunity presented itself at my house. And so I was the first one to him. And it was over before I got to him. And, and I had a great relationship with him. It was exceedingly difficult. I tried to stay as absolutely positive as I could. As I said, on the Foltz Forward blog, I tried to make everything look, the traffic doesn't stop. How do you get up in the morning? You set the alarm clock, and, people will feel sorry for you up to a point, as long as if you're showing people that you are trying to get over it, and not over it, and I don't want to say past it, because I never want to be over it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not now, and I don't think I ever will be. You have to understand that it's not all about you all the time, and that the world's going to keep moving with or without you. And that's kind of was my, mentality with the Foltz Forward blog.
Where were you working at the time?
BHP Billiton.
Were you married?
No, we were divorced. We've been divorced about a year at that point. And
But he was staying at your house?
Well, we shared custody. She was the primary caregiver, but I had my kids every weekend. BHP expected me to be in the office Monday morning at 8, Friday afternoon at 5. So I had an apartment down there, and I had a house here, and every single weekend I came back because I love my kids.
Right.
I wanted to be part of their lives. And so this was like right at the end it was on a Sunday afternoon, right at the end of a ski trip during spring break, and which we had a great time. And he had gotten in trouble before that, and there was questions whether or not we were even going to do the trip because, he was in trouble. So why take him skiing? He's a
13-year-old. Aren't they all in trouble?
Yeah. But, there's two things to that, though. One is that, you can't punish Davis for that. And so we didn't take the ski trip.
That's your other son.
Yeah, my other son. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything wrong. So he deserves a ski trip. But the other is, how much worse will it make it if we didn't go on the trip? And, like I said, we had a great time. It was just a we always had a great time together.
Does suicide run in your family or mental health problems?
Not that I know of.
When you hear people talk about on TV about, because your son, I think, shot himself, right?
Yeah.
When you hear people talk on TV about mental health and gun control and passing, inspections and stuff to whether they can buy guns, do you think that has any relevance at all? Would that work at all, or does it stigmatize mental health? And people are like, "Oh, well, I don't want to get help. I don't want to tell people I need help because then I can't."
Well,
then I'll be blackballed.
We've only got. I know we're probably bumping up against an hour here. I mean, that's a 24-hour podcast. But I think that anybody who goes in to a school or sets up outside of school and just starts indiscriminately firing, I think we can all agree, has got mental challenges.
Yes.
I mean, that much. So, I am not, I have guns. I'm a hunter. I'm not anti-gun at all. But, I don't understand why we can't do simple things. For instance, it didn't work in my case. All my guns were locked up. I just, and the key to my gun locker, was on my keychain, which is normally in Houston. And they just happened to be out that day, on the coffee table. And so, my son, he obviously had a plan.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And so he saw those keys and he went and unlocked the locker, and, the rest is history. And that's what I said in that piece that I wrote earlier this week, is that, this is not, it's not about anti-gun, but lock up your guns. But understand that, a key, a gun locker with a key is like a locked closet. And, that you also might want to do, gun locks. But that's even if you have a perfectly well-adjusted situation, with, perfectly well-adjusted kids, lock up your guns. Mm-hmm. It's just, that's not anti-gun. That's just saying, that's just pro-safety.
Yeah.
And so now, I will say, if you didn't have, the gun ability that we do have, how many people are going to run into a school and start stabbing people, and how successful would they be?
One, and you wouldn't die from it. You get an arm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it has happened,
sure,
but not anywhere close to the level of, there've been more school shootings or mass shootings than there have been days in 2023.
Oh.
Yeah. And we hear about the big ones, but it happens all the time. And the answers, the red flag laws, that's a good start. Red flag laws came from suicide prevention. If you're
describe a red flag law.
Well, it's like if you're posting something on social media that is racist, or I'm going to do this, whatever. When somebody tells you they're going to do something, you need to listen to them. And if you're throwing that stuff out on social media, then somebody should be able to say, "Hey, Mr. Policeman, this guy, look at this guy's social media posts." Because how many times have we seen, in the aftermath of one of these shootings that, well, yeah, there's all these incendiary comments on social media. And it's like, how long is it going to take for somebody to do something? And, there's some out there who are just kind of like, well, this just happens.
I grew up with guns, and my father was a hunter. My husband's a hunter. We grew up with guns, but we didn't have automatic weapons.
No.
I don't understand why we have to have these military weapons in homes. I really don't. Hunters don't hunt with them. It tears your meat up.
Well, I think and that's another compliment. I've shot an AR-15 before.
Well, I have too, actually.
Yeah, but
I don't, that's why I know we don't need them.
Well, yeah, but it's like talking about how much damage they do. Well, that's an ammunition issue. It's not the gun. That's obviously very related, but let's not say that the gun
fires really rapid though.
Well, it's. I mean,
It
it's.
can shoot a lot of people,
But
no
it's-
matter what size the bullet
But it's not
is.
a machine gun.
Close enough. You're not going to hunt with it.
You can't you hunt hogs with it.
Okay.
I mean, really.
Well, that's true.
See, and that's where Democrats got it so wrong, is that they focus more on what the gun looks like rather than what the capability is. And and now that doesn't excuse Republicans for anything, but Democrats need to learn more about the issue before they really go
Well,
down
I think
that road.
I saw you write, or somebody in your paper wrote about how we care so much about the kids, and they're all talking about the kids with these, with all of these transgenders. We're protecting the kids. We're protecting the kids. And then you see where all of America writes back and says, "Well, if you want to protect our kids,
Yeah.
get some gun laws."
Yeah, and I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. I mean, the NRA is a very powerful lobbying group. I mean, and one thing that people need to understand too is that this is a uniquely American issue.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it doesn't happen everywhere around the world. It is here. And so
But we're still the best country. Everybody's trying to get in here.
I'm with you.
If you open up the gates, everybody in the world would flood to America.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
I wouldn't either.
But on the, I don't know how much further you want to go on the, I mean,
What?
I'll just say that my son's suicide in many ways, not the only way, but it's I'm the one responsible for my liver issues that landed me in a hospital for 8 days in Florida. But all of it kind of compounded itself. And that was where, when I wrote the book that I haven't published and I'm not sure I ever will, it was at a time where I knew that I wasn't doing that great. And I was kind of thinking, how can I be with a straight face, say, here's how I handled it. You might want to handle it the same way, because it didn't lead me down the right road. And, luckily by the grace of God, I survived that. And, I'm healthier right now than I've probably been in 20 years.
You look great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You seem happier too than you've had,
Oh,
like you said.
well, there's no question. I mean, that I'm happier with, I've had some very difficult soul searching moments where I've had to really pull myself out of the depths, and with the help of people like my sister, have really helped me, kind of get back on my feet. And then to get this, start working at the Democrat-Gazette and being able to do what I do on a daily basis, it's really hard for me not to be happy right now.
What if a parent is suffering, that's listening, and says, "Yes, my son committed suicide." I mean, I can think of a lot of people whose children have committed suicide, young adults or children. And if they're suffering with that, is there a piece of advice that worked for you, that stays with you, that you think about?
Well, I can tell you the best, first thing is, I would suggest getting professional help. I had some counseling after, in the aftermath of it, but it wasn't, I didn't do it for very long, because I mean, the way I didn't think I needed it. I thought I was doing just fine, and I was for a long time. But one of the people that one of my counselors asked me in the immediate aftermath of this, he said, would you have a problem, writing a letter to your son? And also you might want to just describe the day and do it in detail, not for anybody else to see, but just for yourself. And then he made, I brought that assignment back in, and he made me read it out loud.
Tough.
Woo.
I bet that was tough.
It was, yeah. But what the idea is that, when you go through a tragedy, whether it's suicide or any kind of tragedy, you've got the tragedy swirling around in your head, and it's getting in the way of any kind of focus and ability to do anything else. Whereas if you write it down, it's kind of like you file it away, where you can access it. It's like a computer file. You can go back to it and look at it again. But at the end of that, you close it up, put it back in the computer, and, spend the rest of your day living like a normal person.
And I've even heard of burning the letters. I mean, writing stuff that you're ashamed of. Maybe not that, but, going out and even getting rid of something that's driving you nuts and then putting it on paper, like an ex-husband or ex-wife, writing it all down and going, all right, I'm done with that ex-husband, and then put it in the fire and be done with it.
Well, I mean, what it did for me was, that was a perfect assignment for me as a writer. He didn't know that he had no idea that I'd like to write. No, I mean,
oh, wow.
We weren't even, at that time, nobody really knew I was kind of a writer at heart.
Wow. I thought you wrote speeches in Washington.
Well, I did. Yeah, I mean, I did.
But you weren't writing much at that time because you were working.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hadn't, I mean, the whole thing on Facebook kind of happened just because I started writing and, kind of formatting it in a way that was kind of short to the point, and making, trying to make it funny. And people started expecting it.
We do.
And, well, I'll tell you what's interesting. I mean, because like I said, I've been doing this for years and years, but it's like, it used to be hog fans. I'd started out as hog fans. When I changed it to the Foltz report, I mean, my readership shot through the roof.
And then you had Foltz Forward blog, Foltz Report. Now you've got a book out called something else, or you did never publish it though.
Never publish it.
But why do you keep changing your name all the time? Don't you know that you need to pick one marketing theme and stick with it?
She's about to give you a branding lesson.
I'm about to give you a branding lesson. It's driving me nuts. I can't even figure out what Foltz Forward, what's the difference between Foltz Report and
Foltz Forward. I mean, the idea behind Foltz Forward at that time is that I didn't want to move on, but I wanted to move forward. Because moving on is just kind of has a negative connotation to it that, get past it, no big deal.
Yes.
Moving forward is just, this is going to be with me forever.
But I'm going to keep going.
But I'm going to keep moving forward because you know what? The world is moving forward. Like I said, the traffic doesn't stop. It's, you keep, if you want to be in part of that traffic, then you're going to have to get back in the flow of it. And that's just the way it is. But the Foltz Report, it's truly more of a report about, my thoughts on the Razorbacks for anybody who cares to hear them. So.
All right, this is the last break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Tommy Foltz, writer of the Democrat-Gazette in Little Rock, Arkansas. Still to come, Act 3, maybe Act 4, depending on how you want to look at his life. Surviving liver failure. We're talking about his 8 days in Florida. And what he thinks his next act will be, because I know he's thinking, because he's always thinking. We'll be right back. Boy, it's been fun to talk to you. All right, you went to the hospital, 8 days in the hospital, recovering from acute liver failure. Did you know it was coming? Were you down there partying in Florida, sitting on the beach, and you had an attack? What happened?
Well, I didn't know that it was coming at the velocity that it did. There was a period of time there where I was,
turning yellow.
Yeah. I mean, I truly did. I was jaundiced. And my doctor here knew it. I mean, he saw me and was like, there's no doubt, and so for whatever reason, he said, when you get back from Florida, I was kind of like thinking, man, he should never have let me go to Florida, but
he's not your mother.
But I did not take it anywhere nearly serious enough. And so we were down there, we went on a fishing trip. My son was with me and a few of his friends, and the one I was dating at the time. And we went on a fishing trip, and I really didn't feel good at all. I mean, just not myself. And I mean, I couldn't even finish a beer.
Yeah, you were sick.
Yeah. So as soon as we got on the boat, of course it's hot outside, and there's down below, there's an air conditioned cabin. I went straight down there and slept for the whole deal. And, I really don't know exactly. I mean, I know some of the things that happened, from the time we got off the boat until the time that I went to the hospital. I remember exactly, right before, but then about the first 2 or 3 days in the hospital, I remember
How did they
hallucinations.
How did they know something was wrong with you?
Because I
Couldn't get up.
was making no sense.
Couldn't get up.
Yeah. It was, my only request was, or it wasn't a request, it was a demand. I said, just no ambulance, just take me. And so, the girl that I was seeing at the time, who deserves some of the credit for me being alive, as does my son, I was just kind of babbling on about nothing and just saying some really kind of stupid things. And she said, Davis, why don't you come in here and talk to your dad? And I think he needs to go to the hospital. And he talked to me for a couple of minutes, and I said, he needs to go to the hospital. And I got phenomenal care down there by, as luck would have it, somebody who was trained at UAMS.
We're lucky to have UAMS.
Yes, we are, without a question. So it was, the biggest thing was that it's kind of like, you can never drink again. And I'm like, what?
I don't want to live.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that bad, but and people pat me on the back all the time for, it's been over 3 years now, to not have a drink. They pat me on the back, and I just say, and I appreciate it when they do, but I have to remind them that my alternative is death. And so I love living too much.
There's a lot of people that don't choose life.
Well, I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Did you go to AA?
No, I never have.
Oh, you're missing out on something absolutely wonderful.
Well,
we're all part of the club here at Flag Banner.
Yeah, there's a lot of us here at Flag and Banner.
I don't have a thing in the world against that or Al-Anon or any of those programs. I think they're all very positive. I just haven't felt like I've had the need.
Arkansas has the 9th largest AA family in the world.
That's
Really?
interesting. I didn't know that.
Club 99 in Rotary is Club 99. It's the 99th largest Rotary in the world, and AA has the 9th largest.
Huh.
If you want to make some good connections, go to AA. You will.
Well, also that.
Yeah, well,
Never mind support, just good connections.
I'm telling you, it's a social event up there.
Well, I will say,
All the fun people are dry alcoholics.
Yeah,
Tommy is a good example. My husband is a good example.
Sure.
My daughter's another good example. Sure. My other son's a good example. Half of the family, we get together, half the family drinks, half the family's teetotalers.
Yeah, well, one of my buddies who, was Brad Burney. Grady knows him. He's like, man, Foltz, you're the first person I've ever seen that didn't have to go through rehab to quit drinking. I was like, I consider myself lucky, and I knock on wood that I don't really have the desire.
You did detox though in a hospital.
Yes.
That is where that very first week or so is the hardest and scariest, and when an alcoholic could die.
Yeah. And I was close. The woman that I was with, they thought that she was my wife. And they said, you need to prepare yourself that there's about a 10% chance of him leaving here alive. And
that's small.
Mm-hmm. And
did you have to have a transplant or anything?
No. And they expect a full recovery, the whole thing. And I got to say too, that, it feels good to feel good.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a beer on the golf course, sunny afternoon, but it's just, I can't. And that's okay. It's just, it ain't the end of the world, so
I bet your son's proud of you.
I hope he is. I'm proud of him. There's no doubt about that.
You seem to be a speed writer and a reader. You write constantly. I have a feeling you have notepads everywhere in your house with stuff written on them all over the place.
It's all in here.
He's pointing to his head. This is the radio, Tommy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's YouTube. It's
Well,
fine.
for the benefit of the people in the room.
That's right.
Hey.
Sure.
No, but
And you do a lot of research.
well, I do. Yeah, I mean, I may not be the smartest guy in the world, but I am intellectually curious. And I want to know, what is driving what. I mean, like, there's I made a call yesterday about a company that they recycle oil down in Smackover. And the article I read on it, it was like, didn't say where they sourced the oil from. So I'm like, I know the readers want to know, because I want to know.
Yes.
Where do they get the oil? Is that oil coming from
El Dorado?
Yeah. Is it coming from right around, South Arkansas that's used, farming oil or, what? So just little things like that. But those little things really inform, an editorial or an article of any kind. I mean, I kind of feel like, I want to educate people through these things that I write. And I want to, at least make it readable enough that they want to
Finish
the article.
And then you said you want to make them laugh.
Yes. Well, that's kind of what I mean by make it readable enough. Like I said, you don't want to write a term paper. We all got through with that in college, and, it's got to be, you need to be able to, and I also, I like to, whenever possible, I want to use as many concrete examples as I can.
Right.
Or
What are you reading right now?
Well, I mean, I'm reading Killers of the Flower Moon.
What is that?
Well, it's going to be a 3.5 hour Martin Scorsese film in October, but it's about the Osage Indians who somehow were able to retain their mineral rights in Oklahoma. And at one point in their, back in the 20s and 30s, they were the richest people per capita of anyone in the world. But then they started getting murdered. It's kind of a grand conspiracy. I'm a little more than half.
Is that written by David Grand?
Yeah.
I saw him talking about that on TV.
Yeah. He's got another book out too.
Fascinating stuff.
But I actually was recommended to me by a couple of friends of mine because I had talked to them. I'd recommended a book called Empire of the Summer Moon, which is about.
That's him too?
No. But it's about Quanah Parker, who we don't have time to discuss all of it, but it's about the Comanche Indians and the time, at the very end when everybody was, being forced on the reservations. And, I've kind of had that's the book probably the best book I've ever read, and kind of.
Which one?
Empire of the Summer Moon. It's about Texas and cowboys and Indians and the Union Army and it's savagery. And I mean, it's like, I came away from that book thinking, I don't feel sorry for either side. I mean, the savagery on both sides was just horrible. But anyway, it's about kind of the Native American deal. So they had, recommended this other book. But I've usually got, a couple of books.
By the bed.
Open by the bed. I've got a copy of the U.S. Constitution on my coffee table.
Have you read it?
No, not the whole thing. But I
Oration,
read the First Amendment.
Oration of JFK.
Yeah, I mean.
Is that all of his speeches?
Oh, no.
It's just one?
No, that's
or is that the name of a book?
I just the book was called A Hero for Our Time.
Oh,
but I just like the soaring rhetoric, the positive, not
the way he writes speeches.
Well, yeah, the way he spoke. I mean, he was appealing to our better angels, and I can't emphasize how important that is to the livelihood or to the psyche of the country. You know, I mean, the last thing you want is somebody out there trying to divide. I mean, we can't be divided, and that's what's been happening. And, you know, and listen, you know, I don't like the MAGA right, and I don't like the woke left.
I'm with you.
You know, I mean, I don't want books banned, but I don't want them scrubbed either. You know,
Right.
I mean, there is value, in my opinion, there is value to reading a book the way it was written when it was written.
At the time.
You know, because for one, it tells you how far we've come and maybe how far we still have to go. And so,
And if you don't know the history, like you said earlier, you'll repeat yourself. So you've got to see it all.
and I don't know how you want to use this. One of the things that got me out of my real funk was the poem Invictus. It's by Paul Hemsley, and it is the poem that Nelson Mandela recited to himself every single day for 23 or 27 years or whatever it was in prison. You know, it's like when you're in that bad spot and you're thinking, okay, I'm in the tunnel. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's not an oncoming train, but you still got a ways to go. I read this poem one night, and it's like the train picked me up and just pulled me out in this, you know, broad sunlight. And the reason it did is because that poem was written, the author of that poem wrote it while he was in the hospital after having a foot amputated and facing the prospect of having his other foot or other leg amputated. And he ended up doing some kind of experimental procedure, and that didn't end up happening. But I mean, the state of mind that he was in when he wrote that book is inspiring. I mean, that poem is inspiring to think if he can stay that positive and believe in himself that much in that condition, that means something. They're not just pretty words. It means something. And that's a long way from talking about Mark Twain, but still, you read a Mark Twain book or, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird or something like that, and you think, okay, it was written during a time when, you know, that's a history lesson as much as it is anything else. So, I mean, don't scrub it. You know, and, you know, some of this stuff, you know, Dr. Seuss, I mean, his estate is okay with scrubbing some of his books. And it's like, come on.
Really?
Yeah. You may laugh that I even know what the name of the story is, but the Starbelly Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. It is all about not judging a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, so it's like the messages that come from Dr. Seuss far outweigh anything derogatory that he may have written at any time. And just like, you know, Bill Fulbright, you know, they're talking about taking his statue down at the University of Arkansas.
No.
Because he never voted for the Civil Rights Act. If he had voted for the Civil Rights Act, he would have never been the first establishment politician to be against the Vietnam War. He would have never established the Fulbright scholarships. He would have never been able to do, you know, all those things, including advising, you know, about 4 or 5 presidents on foreign relations. I mean, he would have never been able to accomplish all these great things if he had voted for the Civil Rights Act. Because if he had voted for the Civil Rights Act, he would have lost the next election. Yeah. And so you can't
cherry pick little things because
Exactly.
times were different at different times.
You have to look at the body of work.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying too. Things were different at a different time.
Right.
All right, this is the last question. What's next, Tommy? I know you've been thinking about it. What are you loving? What are you doing? What do you think about when you're not thinking about writing for the Gazette?
What's next is going back to the office and trying to write something for the Democrat-Gazette. Honestly.
You don't dream about something when you lay in bed at night? I dream about owning a farm.
Well.
And riding around on a 4-wheeler on a farm. That's what I dream about.
Yeah, baby.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean,
you got a lot, probably. You're a hunter. You probably want to just go find you a cabin in the woods.
I'd love for some like long lost uncle to leave me a bunch of money, and I could get my own duck club, and
Oh yeah, you're a duck hunter, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I've been deer hunting, but it's kind of like standing in the wilderness with a loaded rifle,
freezing your ass off.
And that's it. So
I think that's why Dad likes it, though.
That is exactly
well,
why my husband loves
listen,
it.
some people are built more for deer hunting. Some people are built more for duck hunting.
Yeah, he likes the solitude.
I like to be able to talk, and you can do that when you're duck hunting until the ducks come close. So,
All right. I just wanted to say thank you. I gave you a desk set. That is a Colorado flag from because you loved it. Colorado.
Cool.
That is a Washington D.C. flag because you might end up back there.
Nah.
And of course, Arkansas in the U.S. That's your desk set for the Democrat-Gazette.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I have enjoyed talking to you so much.
Well, I've enjoyed it too.
I'll keep reading you.
Okay, I'll keep writing.
In closing, to our listeners, I'd like to thank you for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. Until then, be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture in the center of the screen. For more of Kerry's interviews, click either video on the right of the screen. And as always, thank you for watching.